What's up, Psychedelic Investors? My name's James, and we have a great episode for you today. That is because a brand new psilocybin to treat depression study just dropped today. Now, I wasn't even aware of this study's existence. I didn't know that we were going to be getting data from it, but as soon as it came out, I've been excited all day. I've been like a little boy on Christmas because the results of this study are just absolutely fantastic. So I'm going to get into it in just a moment, but first, if you enjoy this video, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, show it to your mom, comment down below, tell us how hyped you are in the comment section. Check out our partners, Spotlight.com, PsychedelicSpotlight.com, all that good stuff. Without further ado, let's hop right in. Let's learn about this brand new psilocybin to treat depression study. Alrighty, so I'm going to put this up on the screen here. Let's start with the title. There's lots of stuff to break down in the title, and then we will read through the article. Alrighty, so open label study of COMP360 psilocybin therapy for depression in cancer patients demonstrates feasibility of simultaneous psilocybin administration in small groups. Alrighty, so for a little title here, there is a lot of information. We're going to break down each of the different parts. You can see how I highlighted it in different colors. So first things first, we got open label study. So basically what this means is that it's not a clinical trial. In a clinical trial, there is a control group that receives a placebo. Here, that isn't the case. Everybody that's in this study received psilocybin. There was no control group, there was no placebo group, and this limits somewhat the amount of extrapolations we can make from the data. The second important part here is the psilocybin they're using is actually COMP360. So I'm sure most of you guys know that COMP360 is Compass Pathways' proprietary formulation of psilocybin, and that is the psilocybin that was used in this trial. It's not a Compass Pathways clinical trial, or open label study rather, but it was using Compass Pathways psilocybin. Third important part here is it was done in cancer patients. So it wasn't necessarily just done in whoever has major depressive disorder or whatever. It was done in people specifically who had cancer and were dealing with some mental health issues because of them dealing with cancer. And finally, the last part in this title is it demonstrates feasibility of simultaneous psilocybin administration in small groups. So rather than it being a one-on-one relationship with a therapist, the study was actually conducted in small groups of between 2 to 4 people. So multiple people were getting psilocybin therapy done in the same room with each other, so it was a little bit of a group experience. Alrighty guys, before hopping into all this good stuff that you see, the very first thing, I just want to be absolutely clear so that there's no any sort of confusion here. The study that we're going through right now is not the big Compass Pathways clinical trial, phase 2B, that we are looking forward to. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that one up on the screen. So this is the study that I have talked about all the time, the Compass Pathways phase 2B psilocybin therapy trial for treatment-resistant depression. This is going to be the biggest news of the entire year when this drops. The one we're looking at today is not that. They are, however, both using the same drug, COMP360. They're both dealing with depression, although the one in the Compass Pathways study that we're waiting for is a little bit more serious. That is treatment-resistant depression, as opposed to the current one, which is just Major Depressive Disorder. The difference is treatment-resistant depression. People have already sought help for their depression a minimum of 2 other times on 2 different treatments, and it hasn't worked out. Just lastly, to finish up on this trial that we're waiting for at the end of the year, the reason we're so excited for it, in case people don't know, is for 2 reasons. One, it is the largest psychedelics clinical trial to date, with 216 patients in it. So if the results of this are as amazing as previous smaller trials, like the one we're going to get into in a minute, we need to get hyped, is basically the outcome of it. And the second reason that it is so exciting is because it is the furthest progressed clinical trial ever done with psilocybin. It's phase 2B. So yeah, that's just a little bit. We're going to actually be comparing this trial to the one we're discussing today throughout the episode. So that's why I just wanted to give you a little bit of background information on this one before we get into the rest of the episode. So going back to the study at hand, the study we're talking about today, we're just going to start together reading through it. We're going to pause after almost every sentence, basically, to talk about the significance here. Alrighty, so Compass Pathways, ticker symbol CMPS, welcome the top-line data shared today from an open-label study of psilocybin therapy for depression in cancer patients. Within 1 week of a single administration of COMP360 psilocybin therapy, 50% of participants achieved remission in depression symptoms, which was sustained for the 8-week follow-up period. So this is kind of the top line number that everybody's excited about on Twitter and in Reddit right now, is the fact that half of the participants in this study, up to 8 weeks after they got the psilocybin dose given to them in the therapy session, they had improved so much that they were considered in remission. They no longer showed enough depression symptoms to be diagnosed with depression. Now, we can't quite call this a cure at this stage or we can't say they were cured because it's only a follow-up after 8 weeks, after 2 months. In order to say that these people have been cured, we'd have to check in a year, 2 years, 5 years later and see that they still have the same amount of benefits from the experience. Obviously, after 8 weeks, we can't make those type of decisions, those type of conclusions. However, still very exciting. Continuing, the investigator-initiated feasibility study. So again, it wasn't Compass Pathways that did this, it was one of their partners, an investigator that initiated this, but Compass Pathways gets access to all the data. The investigator-initiated feasibility study was conducted by Maryland Oncology Hematology at the Aquilino Cancer Center in Rockville. Probably said half of those words wrong, not going to try to say it again. This study involved 30 patients. So this is the first important kind of limiting factor, guys. This was a small study. So we need to take these two factors in consideration. A, it's a small study, and B, there was no control group. So even though, as we're going to get into in just a moment, the results of the study are absolutely fantastic, gangbusters, wonderful, hard to wrap your head around how good they are, we have to be careful about extrapolating too much because it's a small study, no control group. Anyhow, so the 30 patients with cancer diagnosis and major depressive disorder were in this study. Half of the participants had previously been treated for their current episode of depression with antidepressants, and all were receiving active treatment for cancer. 19 participants had no previous experience with psychedelic substances. Lots to unpack there as well. So, as we said a moment ago, if we look at the Compass... Oh, sorry guys, let's just try to get to the right page there. If we look at the Compass Pathways trial, everybody in it has treatment-resistant depression, which is more severe than just major depressive disorder because they've already tried to treat it at least 2 other times. Some of these people have tried to treat their depression before, but it doesn't say how many times. So somewhere between half to all of these patients wouldn't be diagnosed with treatment-resistant depression. Alrighty. So patients were given a 25 milligram dose of COMP360 psilocybin. That's a large dose, guys. That is enough to trip balls on. 25 milligrams of psilocybin is a very large dose. So they were given 25 milligrams of COMP360 in conjunction with psychological support from specifically or specially trained therapists following the COMP360 psilocybin therapy protocol. The Maryland team also pioneered simultaneous group administration in a cancer care center, with 2 to 4 patients being given psilocybin at the same time, with 1-to-1 therapist support. So I actually find this so fascinating, guys, the fact that they were treating multiple patients in the same room at the same time. The reason I find this so exciting is because there's lots of anecdotal evidence of people getting more benefit out of group experiences on psychedelics. So when we're talking like a shamanistic retreat or some sort of psychedelic retreat or even a musical festival where everybody's on MDMA, the group aspect of the experience, a lot of people claim brings benefits in and of itself. So it's just interesting to see this being looked at in a scientific manner, the idea that maybe it's better to treat people together as opposed to individually. Although, even if there were 4 patients in the same room, they still had a 1-to-1 therapist ratio, so there was 4 therapists in the room as well. This tested the value of group support for cancer patients, as well as the potential for increased scalability in providing psilocybin therapy in real-world settings. We've talked about this on the channel all the time, guys. One of the biggest hurdles, one of the biggest stumbling blocks of psychedelic therapy going forward is going to be able to scale up these therapy sessions. So if in the future we are able to treat 2, 3, 4 people in the same room and maybe only have 1 therapist for these people, again, in this study it was a 1-to-1 ratio, but assuming larger studies show that this is beneficial, this group therapy setting, I'm assuming that the number of therapists in the room will decline. So if we have 1 therapist for 3 patients or 1 therapist for 4 patients, That means all of a sudden we are scaling at 4 times or 3 times the speed, which would be absolutely fantastic. Again, we need to verify the findings in this study, which we're about to get to in just a moment, but this is super important. Scaling is super important. Alrighty, so let's get into the results. COMP360 psilocybin therapy was found to be generally well tolerated with no treatment-related serious adverse events. So nobody stabbed their therapist because they thought he was the devil. Adverse effects seen on the day of dosing, so there were some small adverse effects, just not, quote, serious adverse events. Adverse effects seen on the day of dosing were as expected from experience in healthy volunteer groups and included headaches, changes in sensory perception, and mood alteration. So it doesn't really say what exactly the mood alteration was other than it wasn't serious. But the fact that there were no serious adverse effects is very, very significant. Moving on. Patients were assessed using the Montgomery-Åsberg Depression Rating Scale, MATTERS, a clinician-administered symptom questionnaire. We're going to take a quick pause here, guys, because this article doesn't really explain what the MATTERS rating scale is, so we're just going to look at a different press release on this same topic. And again, I clicked the wrong button, so just give me a second. Alrighty. So here it explains what the MATTERS scale is a little bit more. It's a clinician-administered symptom questionnaire scoring the severity of depression from 0, depressive symptoms absent, to 60, severe depression. So if you score 0 on this MATTERS scale, it means that you are in perfect mental health, no depressive symptoms whatsoever. On the flip side, if you got a 60, well, you aced the mental health care test, bro. You got perfect score on your depression test. You got mega depression, basically, is what it's saying. Okay, so back to this, to the findings. So understanding now what the MATTERS, I don't think I'm saying that right, the Montgomery-Åsberg Depression Rating Scale, understanding what this is, we can take a look at how people scored on it before and after their psilocybin experiences. So it says here, a sustained response rate, which is defined as a decrease by greater than or equal to 50% in the MATTERS score system from the baseline, at any visit up to and including week 3 and also fulfilled at week 8, was seen by 24 patients. So that's a little bit wordy. Let's rephrase that for a second, guys, so that everybody can understand how significant this is. 24 of the 30 patients involved in this study, or in other words, 80% of the people in this study, saw their depression symptoms, as measured by the MATTERS scale, decrease by 50% or more. Again, let's just repeat that. Their symptoms of depression decreased by 50% or more. 80% of the participants in this study. Guys, that's pretty fantastic. Show me a study of SSRIs or any other sort of antidepressant drug or regime that has 80% effectiveness. It's unheard of. This is amazing. Continuing, 15 patients showed remission of depression symptoms, which is a MATTERS score of less than 10, 1 week after a single dose of psilocybin, which was sustained up to 8 weeks. So again, 50%, 15 of the 30 people improved so much that they were in remission, or they were no longer diagnosed with depression, although again, this is only 8 weeks after. In order to say they were quote-unquote cured, we'd have to wait a lot longer, probably a year or two. So 50% improved so much after 8 weeks that they no longer had depression, and a further 30% of people improved by more than half, although they weren't technically in remission. Are you guys starting to see how important this study and its findings are? How groundbreaking this is for the future of psychedelic therapy? I hope so. The 30 patients in the study began with an average MATTERS score of 25.9, representing moderate depression. So again, this is a point where we're going to go to the other study here, the Compass Pathways, just to show you that the severity of the depression is a little bit different. So in the one that we're all waiting for at the end of the year, the results being released at the end of the year, everybody in the trial has treatment-resistant depression. They've tried at least twice to get better, and it has failed, which is much more serious than the current study, which was only looking at, well, all sorts of depression, but on average, it was only a moderate depression. So as amazing as these results are, it might not be as good in the Compass Pathways study, just because the depression is more severe there. After psilocybin therapy, the average score dropped by 19.1 points. So let's just do some quick maps here, guys. Let's channel our inner Big Shaq 25.9 minus 19.1, so we get to 15. 15 minus 9 is 6.8. The average MADRS score afterwards was 6.8. That is like we see up here, 6.8 is below 10, which is in remission. So on average, people drop down to remission, which is absolutely fantastic. Again, half the people were in remission, and then a further 30% of people improved significantly but weren't technically in remission. The study investigators noted this was an open-label study in which neither the patients nor raters were blinded, so there is a significant risk that the results incorporate a large expectancy bias. So that's another important thing, guys, that I just want to hammer home to you guys. As exciting as these results are, as fantastic and wonderful as they are, we have to understand the two things. One, small sample size. B, there was no, I just went from 1 to B, that was stupid. 1, small sample size. 2, there was no sort of control group. So we really have to be careful about extrapolating out results from this study, even though the results are so fantastic. Let's get into some quotes here, guys. So we got Dr. Manish Agrawal, whose name I guarantee I'm saying wrong, and he says, or she says, they are the trial's principal investigator. They say that a cancer diagnosis can change the course of a patient's life. For complete cancer care, we need to focus on whole person healing and include the mental well-being of our patients. That's such a big duh statement that seems like common sense when we talk about it, but I don't know if you guys have ever gone through it personally or gone through a loved one being diagnosed with cancer. There are two different parts. One is the physical well-being and actually getting yourself cured of the cancer, getting the treatments you need. But the other aspect is dealing with the mental health shock that comes along with something so devastating. And obviously we need to help people with this as well, but it's just something that's not really in our mental health care or in our healthcare paradigm at the moment, so we need to change that. Alrighty. This is not something widely addressed today, but it's time to do something about it. Amen. These study results have shown that psilocybin therapy may be helpful with major depressive disorder in cancer, and we look forward to doing further analysis and following up with additional studies. While it is premature to draw any definitive conclusions from this study, again, premature, guys, simultaneous administration appears to be well tolerated and feasible, so it's safe, and the results are promising and worthy of future research. Professor Guy Goodwin, who is the Chief Medical Officer of Compass Pathways, said this: "These preliminary findings suggest that COMP360 psilocybin therapy was well tolerated by cancer patients with major depressive disorder. It is promising to see that this may be a feasible fast-acting therapy for depressed patients with significant physical comorbidity. This would certainly be welcome in conditions where depression is difficult to treat in a timely way. This open-label major depressive disorder study is very different from the randomized, controlled, double-blinded phase 2b study that Compass has conducted for patients with treatment-resistant depression. Nevertheless, it has given a positive signal of the potential for COMP360 psilocybin therapy, and we are delighted to see that a number of patients showed signs of improvement. We are now considering how to take this forward with future studies as we continue to develop a broad portfolio of therapies in areas of significant unmet need in mental health care." So, in reading this, and this is just kind of my first opinion, guys, it almost seems like Mr. Goodwin or Professor Goodwin here is a little bit hedging when he's talking about the results of this. As positive as they are, he's like, hey guys, calm down. This doesn't really resemble the trial that we're going to be doing later, which hopefully doesn't, like, this guy already knows the results of the trial because the trial's been completed. They're just compiling data and they're going to release it soon. So hopefully that is absolutely fantastic. His comments here do seem a little hedged, but I'm probably reading way too much into it. In fact, I am definitely reading way too much into it. So again, guys, just super, super, super excited for this trial here. Again, coming at the end of the year, largest psychedelics clinical trial ever to happen. And if the results of this trial in any way match the results of the trial we just, or the clinical, the study that we just talked about, then I don't want to say it would be game over, but it would be entering the third period in a hockey match with a 10-point lead. If this huge trial comes back with an 80% effectiveness rate and a 50% cure rate, then guys, we made a fantastic choice by getting in on this sector early. So just to do a very quick recap, guys, of like the 3 or 4 most important points here. There was an investigator-led study that used COMP360, Compass Pathways proprietary psilocybin, to try to treat depression in cancer patients. They found in their small study, which was open label, so no control group, small study of 30 patients, 50% of people improved so much after 8 weeks that they were in remission or no longer had enough symptoms to be diagnosed with depression, essentially. That doesn't mean that they were completely better, but they were mostly better. Another 30% of people, bringing the grand total to 80% of the people, 24 out of 30? I might be getting that wrong here, guys. Sorry about that. I don't see it here right in front of me. Yes, it was 24. Okay. 24 out of 30 patients, which is 80% of people, improved so much, or improved by more than 50%. So absolutely gangbusters. I honestly am at a loss for words. Absolutely fantastic. However, then the downside is we need to remember that there are a lot of limitations with this study, so we need to be very careful with how much we extrapolate from it. The only thing that we can really do with this study, or really say that this study justifies, is the need for larger trials like the one that Compass Pathways has recently completed, and then hopefully we're going to have trials with thousands of people next year in phase 3 clinical trials. So that's really all we can take out of this study, but it was still absolutely fantastic. So one last thing to note is that we actually learned about this like 8 hours ago, and we tweeted about it at the time, or 6 hours ago at the time of recording, but by the time you guys see this, it'll probably be like 8 hours ago. And the point I just want to make here is that you should follow us on Twitter, basically, because we talk about things that are happening in real time on Twitter. Often it can take a day or longer to get a video out through script writing, editing, all that good stuff. So my Twitter handle here, and you guys have been bugging me for like half a year to get a Twitter, so we finally went ahead, we bit the bullet, we got Twitters here. So my handle here is @Psy_invest. I said today when I first read about this, wow, a new psilocybin trial treating depression in cancer patients was released. 50% of people improved so much they were in remission 8 weeks after treatment, and 80% saw a sustained improvement with severity of their depression decreased by 50%. So if you follow us on Twitter, you'll learn about this much before other people do, so definitely go do that. Then my business partner, Maria Hawley, @Psy_Hawley, responded, and you guys should definitely go follow her too. She's going to be outpacing me in followers very soon, @Psy_Hawley. She is very smart, definitely go follow her, lots of great takes on the industry. She says, I wonder if it's related to the so often mentioned ego-death experience, which would make such depressing changes in your life more acceptable. One can only wonder. And of course, such a great take on it. So if some of you guys don't know, when you take a large amount of psychedelics, you can experience something called an ego death. And again, in this study, they used 25 milligrams of psilocybin, which is a very large dose. So they don't talk about whether or not anybody experienced ego death in this study, but I would assume many people did, seeing as it's such a large dose. And it would make sense if that maybe contributed to some of the benefits. But like she ends it with, one can only wonder. Alrighty guys, that's more or less it for today. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I hope you're as excited about the results of this study as I am. As you can see, I'm extremely excited. I am hyped. I'm ready to go. This makes me even more excited to read the results of this COMP360 trial at the end of the year. Again, I've been saying it so much over this past 6 months. This is going to be a turning point for the entire industry. I don't know if it will affect the stock market in the short term or not, because oftentimes when it comes to short term, the stock market is stupid. But in terms of validating the thesis of psychedelics being able to treat mental health, this is what we're waiting for. This COMP360 trial right here, which is going to be released at the end of the year. If the results of this match the results of this trial here, then it's almost game over, guys. And with that, I'll leave you. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Tell me down below whether or not this excites you as much as it excites me. Don't forget to check out our partners at psychedelicspotlight.com. They do absolutely fantastic work. They don't just focus on investing. They focus on cultural issues. They focus on business issues. They focus on all sorts of different aspects of the psychedelic industry. So definitely check them out, psychedelicspotlight.com. And with that, guys, I'm going to leave you. Peace.